I know this is weird. Yes, it's weird. Like, we're all figuring this out together, but like, that's the key, is that we're going to do it together and everything's fine.
Hey everyone, this is Aaron Noe with windconductor.org. I'm really excited to present the next interview to you. Joni Perez is very well known within the band community, and she was kind enough to spend a little bit of time just talking about some of the challenges that she is facing in the Woodlands high school program with all the events happening and surrounding the coronavirus and the shutdowns and everything, and offer some really great insights about engaging your student leaderships, as well as talking about the online sectionals and how she is utilizing that as an experience to engage the kids and keep them practicing. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed putting it together for you guys.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to try to contribute in whatever way I can.
Yeah, well, it's been crazy for everybody. I mean, this is totally unprecedented, and I can't think of another event that is similar to this.
Right. We're kind of all feeling our way through it. And while that's a little scary, I think it's also comforting to know that everybody's kind of in that same boat together. So kind of need to be leaning on each other right now and figuring out how to best get through these next few weeks, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what's happening in your area, because it's different in different pockets all around the U.S. I live in Virginia, and the band directors up here are in a totally different predicament where our governor just shut down schools completely for the rest of the year. So tell us a little bit what's happening in your region.
Well, as of right now, we are out until at least April 13th. What we've been told is that if we aren't mandated otherwise before then, that our school district superintendent school board is going to reevaluate things on April the 6th, and I guess kind of see where we are at that point, if there haven't been any restrictions that have come down at the state level. Reevaluate and see what things look like. So as of right now, mid-April on is still a go, even though we know it's a very big possibility that that may not happen.
Yeah. So so with the kids completely gone, what are some of the things that you're doing in your program to help engage those kids while they're at home to keep them practicing and moving forward with the program?
Well, it's been an evolving process, as I'm sure it is with everyone. Fortunately, before all this happened, we had already implemented some online playing processes that our kids have been participating in for a while, like using the Charms recording studio and Smart Music. And so when I found out that we were going to be out the week after spring break, and this of course was before we knew there'd be more time, I contacted my assistant director, Kyle Whitty, and we're like, okay, let's go ahead and create some assignments for them to keep them playing their instruments. Because at that time we thought, okay, well, if we're going to be out an extra week, let's keep them on their horns. And so we created, this was right away, we created an every other day assignment for them to submit and for us to evaluate and just make sure that they're still playing. And that was on their concert music, trying to increase tempos and give them feedback and whatnot. So that was pretty standard for them, and it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. Of course, when we found out that school was going to be canceled for longer, we had to start thinking more outside of the box. Honestly, the first group that I thought of were my seniors.
Yeah.
And so music aside, I planned a conference call like this with my seniors set up. And that was just so that I could check in with them and, see how they're doing and kind of empathize with them. Let them know that like, it's okay to feel disappointed about this. Nobody saw it come in, and kind of provide them a sounding board, to talk about some of the things that they were currently concerned about, and to also reassure them, things are going to be okay. We don't
Yeah.
really know what this is. We don't know kind of what's in our near future, but like, let's stay connected. Everything's going to be fine.
I,
Um,
and I think that's I love that you brought that up because I think that's a really important thing to really take into consideration in all this is, you know, having that reassurance and encouraging our students. It's much more than just getting the horns on the faces
right,
while they're out of school. We want to encourage them and be there for them because this up to this point in their life, I mean, this is a huge, huge thing that they're facing in front of them.
right. Right. And that's one of the first things that I wanted to do is just connect with them, and let them see a face that they're used to seeing every day, and say, this, I know this is weird. Yes, it's weird. Like, we're all figuring this out together, but like, that's the key, is that we're going to do it together, and everything's fine. And that was good to be able to do that, and also let them see each other's faces. And I
Yeah.
also reached out to my leadership team as well to do the same thing as check in, but also uh, um, kind of mobilize them a little
Right.
bit, because we knew in the coming weeks that a lot of communication was going to be necessary, and it shouldn't all be coming from the directors. There needs to be like a it takes a village type thing, and
Yeah.
I feel like the students will respond and be more engaged if it's not just coming from us. And so help them understand, like, this is what we're going to be needing from you. Please watch for more from us to help guide you through how you can help us navigate through these next few weeks or
Yeah.
couple of months.
Can
um,
we just take a look at that? Because that's actually something that you talked about in the interview with the SBO magazine uh, a few years ago when that came out, is your student leadership and getting them involved in the process. So tell us a little bit, in times like this, it really reveals how important having that student leadership responsibility is.
yeah, yeah. You're so right. You know and also, your leadership team is influential all year, and you have to find ways to keep them leading in the spring versus the fall. And this was a good opportunity to involve them in very meaningful ways. um, One of the things that I've done is, uh, I've I've been in contact with my band VP, who's on student council at the school, and they've got a challenge every day type thing that they're doing with their student council. And I have been getting that from my band vice president every day, and then having my student leaders implement that with their sections and try to make sure that they're rotating through who's um, getting that information out, so that everybody in every section is involved in spreading these challenges out, so everybody feels like they're contributing, getting those messages out to people. I've also got section leaders that are doing check-ins, section check-ins once a week, just checking in on everybody. Is
Yeah.
everybody there? Is everybody okay? But also giving out specific bits of information from us as the directors that we need them to know, in terms of, hey, this is what's coming up. Please watch for this. So we're trying to embolden them to be part of this umbrella of communication, to where everybody knows what's going on. It's a community thing. um, and I plan on getting them more involved in the coming weeks as well. It's just been an evolving process and taking one thing at a time, but they've been great. And I think they feel a sense of purpose
Yeah.
um, here
And
as well. Check in on your sections, check in on everybody, make sure everything's good, and
yeah.
I think that's been really important.
And I love that because from a practical standpoint as a director, uh, you know, student leadership is great because it helps to take some of the burden off of the faculty team. It gives them
Right.
responsibility, but at the same time, it really helps to uh, have the kids take ownership of the program, and having that peer-to-peer experience is so
Mhm.
much more meaningful, and having the direction come in from those sides.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I try to make sure they understand that too. Like, this is not just me telling you to do something. Like, this is going to carry more weight coming from you. It may mean more to them coming from you. And make sure when you're delivering these messages that there's an element of humanness along with just being a communicator. And I really tried to impress upon them during our leadership conference that I was going to be leaning on them to, you know, to make sure that we're staying connected as a band family and a band community. Um, and I also tried to make sure that they realized, and I've been talking to my kids in sectionals about this too. I don't know that everybody really gets the gravity of or the reality of what this is yet. I mean, they're still kind of on extended spring break
Right.
mentality. And I think the adults are realizing the significance of this a little sooner than the students, which is understandable, but trying to get them to realize, hey, you think you're bored now, like you really need to start thinking about the longevity of this and how to find meaningful moments in your days. Um, you know, we're going to assume that homework is part of your everyday. We're going to assume that playing your horn is part of your everyday. Outside of that, what are you trying to do with this time? And I talked to the leaders specifically about that so that they could be wrapping their mind around the fact that this may not seem that big yet, but it's going to start to sink in more, like the reality of, I can't leave my house, I can't be around my friends, I can't see my relatives, I have to cancel this party, I have to cancel this ceremony, and I think that's starting to become a little bit more real for some of them based off of some of the conversations I had today. So I think it's important, as educators, they're hearing from us that this is normal, this is natural, it's an evolving situation, it's okay to be confused about how to handle these situations, but to lean on people, to communicate with each other and stay connected so that you can work through, some of these really bizarre situations that they're having to deal with.
Yeah, most definitely. So let's get into some of the practical things. When we connected right at the beginning of this, you had mentioned that you were coming from a sectional, that you had a sectional this afternoon. And
Yes.
so tell us a little bit about what that looks like during a school closure for you guys.
Okay. So this week we're just doing one sectional this week per small section. We've made those 40 minutes long um, on Zoom, and that's with parent permission. And we're doing 40 minutes so we can be on kind of a 45-minute schedule for the starting times. Um, you could make them a lot longer, and maybe they'll become longer and we'll adapt into different formats over the coming weeks. But right now we're keeping it 40 minutes. And we've been doing each band's section. I teach two bands. My colleague Kyle teaches two bands. There's actually only two of us that are the band directors for the program for the wins. And so I've had to find 14 sectional slots
Oh, wow.
to do this week between Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and my assistant Kyle as well. And so we've come up with, we just learned that we could use Zoom. And so okay, great, let's throw something together and let's get it going. And we started that today, and I've met with 5 sections today.
Wow.
I'm gonna meet with 5 sections tomorrow, and I'm gonna meet with 4 sections on Friday. And it's the same for my assistant. And so we started that this afternoon, and I'd be glad to share kind of what we did if you're interested in that.
Yeah, just kind of a brief recap of maybe what that may look like in an online session. I think that may be beneficial to a lot of directors.
Right. So this was the first time we've done anything like this. And so you kind of have to not expect too much at all the first
Right.
time. In fact, I wouldn't expect much of anything the first time because everybody's getting used to the format. You're dealing with, if you use something like Zoom or some kind of video conference, you're dealing with different internet speeds, you're dealing with the microphone processing, all sorts of things. Some students are going to be on their phone. Some students are going to be on their computer. So there's a lot of different variables. But we've managed to work through some of those kinks today. And the thing that I did for this very first session, because this was the first time I'm seeing a bunch of these kids, right, face to face. So today our goal this week is to first just say, hey guys, it's really good to see you, and hope you're doing okay. Check in on them. I'm having every single kid just briefly say how they're doing and share how they've been utilizing their time, whether that's been productive or not. Allowing them the opportunity to talk for a moment and let us hear their voice. And it just gives me a window into, what it's been like for them.
Yeah.
And that takes a little bit of time. And we've been able to do that on unmute so far. I've been able to unmute all of them. But if you have to mute all, it's not a big deal. I just felt like they were more conversational when they weren't muted, because they didn't have to think about pressing buttons and things like that. So if your group is small enough, you can probably get away with that. And then, so that took about, 20, 25 minutes. And then we played for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And the way that we did that was, so let's say I have 6 kids or 8 kids in a section, and we all have these basic exercises that we do every day in our rehearsal. So I just used that as a starting point. Everybody knows these exercises, no stress, right? And so I would have one person model the exercise, and that person would be unmuted, and they would play their metronome into their microphone. So everybody could hear that pulse, and that person would model an exercise. I would tell them what the exercise is. Everybody knows that exercise. I would teach them how they're going to count off. We would do that together. So everybody, let's do this together. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, play. And I would do that 2 or 3 times, have them do it with me so they understand they're responsible for the count off. They're going to do it. So there was like a systematic approach to that. So then we have that person model, and everybody else plays along. And every student hears 2 players. They hear themselves playing and they hear the model playing. So they're not playing by themselves from an oral standpoint, right? They're actually all playing together, but they can't hear each other, obviously. But at least that way, they hear themselves playing with another person.
Yeah.
And then we would rotate through each student through a new exercise. And that way everybody's kind of responsible for contributing, and they kind of, you can tell some are like, oh, it's my turn. I need to really take this seriously. And so that
And
works
again,
well.
going back to that whole concept of student leadership, I mean, this is a building block for, your younger kids going through the section and having those younger kids lead on one of those exercises.
Yes. Yeah. So it's not like your standard section leader every time. Now I start with the strongest players each time, just so that there's a confident person saying, okay, this is how we're going to do it, and the others see it and they realize, oh, I can do that. And so that's been cool. That's been really cool to see, especially in our lower performing bands, to see them step up and do those things.
Yeah.
So we would do that for a few minutes, no big deal, nothing stressful. And then I would give them a few minutes to ask me questions, because they've got questions. What's going to happen with this? What's going to happen with that? And just be as truthful with them as I could. And that's an opportunity for me to get to kind of update them on things. And that's been really productive as well. So the format has been kind of like half the time being human, having a conversation, making sure like we're okay. And then a quarter of the time has been playing our instrument. And the other quarter of the time has been like a Q&A session and information for moving forward, and that's seemed to have worked pretty well. Now we're going to start having sectionals twice a week next week, and they know
Okay.
this. We're going to do 2 40-minute sessions because you got to keep them on their horns.
Yeah.
Once a week when they don't have class, I mean, it's
Yeah.
that's not going to cut it. So we're going to try to do twice a week, and we're going to get a little bit more focused on the things that we're doing in those upcoming sectionals.
Yeah. So in an ideal situation, let's say that you get back in, mid-April, we get the green light. What is that? What is the goal between now and then towards having that first rehearsal coming in, hopefully in April?
Hopefully, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the two biggest things right now, in my opinion, are keeping them playing in whatever capacity and keeping connected.
Yeah.
We don't, if we get to go back, we don't exactly know when that is. We know that our state assessment, our UIL events are not going to happen. We already know that. So if we end up going back to school, then we try to find other ways to let them perform that music that they've been working on. Maybe that's just making it a part of the spring concert. I'm not really sure, but we just want them playing their horns. On these
Yeah.
sectionals coming up, they're going to be playing parts of their solo for us because we have a solo festival that's supposed to start at the end of May, or start at the end of April. So we're going to have them working on those and playing snippets of that for each other. We're giving out our audition music this week that normally wouldn't go out for another 2 or 3 weeks. We're putting out audition music for next year so they can start looking at that. We can start, kind of going over those things.
And that's actually smart in and of itself, because that's a motivator to get them on
Yes.
their instruments.
Right. Because they know that their contest isn't happening now. And so, you're naturally going to have a letdown on the investment into the
Right.
concert music. So they've got to find other ways to kind of keep them invested. And the solo is one of those because they all have that. Obviously, seniors aren't going to be super invested in audition music, but I've already told them that they're going to be learning it with us because we need to have, some things that we're doing together as a group. And we're also anticipating getting some of our marching show music in the next week or two to begin looking at that. So, like I said, we just want to keep them playing their horns and provide different ways for them to keep doing that, and keep them connected as a group so that they're not losing the human element to what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. So I love what you're doing. There's so many layers to what you're doing. I love, uh, first and foremost, I like how you've really engaged your student leadership and kept them involved in the process throughout all of that, and to give them that buy-in into the program. But I also love your approach to some of the innovative ways to keep the kids engaged through the sectionals, having things that we typically wouldn't do right now be a motivator to get them to practice on their own.
Right.
And I really love the fact that, you know, you're making a conscious effort to absorb the human aspect of this, because we're all feeling that fear, whether as educators and especially as kids. And I love that you've established that time to where you can kind of talk and engage about those things.
Mhm. Yeah, they need that. I mean, so much of school is the social aspect, and a lot of kids are in band because of the social
Right.
aspect.
Yeah.
We would like to think that all they want to do is play their horns. That's not the reality of it. Playing their instruments for a lot of them is just kind of a means to an end for being a part of something. And so we have to remember this is not just, are they playing those notes and rhythms correctly, but
Right.
giving them an avenue to do something meaningful, right now, and something that's normal for them. Give them some kind of sense of normalcy, because being in an ensemble, any performing arts requires you to learn and perform and adapt around the group that you're in, and with not being in the classroom changes everything for what we do. And so if you're not making it a priority to make sure they're seeing each other, hearing each other play somehow, and letting them, connect with each other through music and through conversation. If you're not doing that, then they're missing out on so much more. And so I think it's our responsibility to keep those things at the forefront of our minds. It's not just, did they learn that piece of music? It's so much more than that.
Yeah, good points, great points. So we've talked about engaging the kids and keeping them, having ways to motivate them through all of this process. What are some of the things that you're doing as a professional to keep yourself motivated through all this? And also, what are some of the things, maybe not even school related, that you're doing to kind of keep the sanity about you?
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna lie and say that I figured all that out.
Nobody has.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, this whole past week has been largely about, okay, what are the next steps? Coming up with a game plan and figuring out what our resources are and whatnot, and trying not to watch too much news, but still needing to be informed, and figuring out all the life things that are changing, outside of work, and handling that. So I'll be very truthful and say that, yeah, I've been handling some family things. I've been, trying
Yeah.
to, and there's other organizations that I'm involved in that having to kind of navigate through that as well. And so, there's been 1 or 2 days this past week where I've gotten a little antsy and a little, kind of, how are we going to do this for the next 2 or 3 weeks or 2 months or 3 months or whatever
Right.
it's going to be. And when that happens, I have to either like make sure, okay, turn off the news, turn off the television, get off the computer, go outside, just get outside for a few minutes and take a walk, walk the dog. I'm a cat person, but,
Yeah.
I have to go walk the dog, play with the cats.
Right.
I've talked on the phone a lot this past week, just with relatives and, with colleagues and with our marching show designers. We've had conversations that have nothing to do with the show. It's just
Right.
talking to each other and making sure that we're keeping those relationships going. But I've really tried to check in on people, check in on our close friends, check in on my students. Because if you're checking in on people, then you're keeping that component like alive in your psyche. If you're checking to make sure that other people are okay, then you realize that you also have to figure out ways to be okay.
Right.
And, it's an evolving thing. Like I said earlier with my students, I don't think we really feel it, really feel it
Right.
yet. We're starting to feel it. But I think it's going to become more difficult. And I've been saying to the kids, find meaningful ways to break up your day, find find some of the TED Talks online and get inspired and remotivated.
Yeah.
And, look at music in a different way. And there's so many things out there right now that are being offered for free, like all the webinars and seminars and free this and that's available in a way that's never been possible before. And so search for those types of things, whether it's through a leadership component, or through a music therapy component, or
Right.
or all these online concerts that are taking
Yeah.
place. There's a lot of ways to be fulfilled in ways that maybe we didn't have time for before. And when I talk to people, I kind of keep saying, like, there's silver linings in here if we look for them. There's blessings in disguise
Yeah.
through all this if we look for them. And that's kind of, I think, how I'm trying to stay grounded, is looking for those opportunities that maybe I didn't have before, or maybe I just wasn't willing to make time for. I think that's really important, to look for those opportunities to reconnect with relatives, to go and plant the garden in the backyard, to read that book that you've been reading. Those are all really good ways to get your focus off of the reality of what's going on right now.
Right. Well, and great advice, great things to think about, and I can't, what better place to end than right there. So, but Joni, I really do appreciate you coming and talking to us today, sharing your insights. I know that it's going to help a lot of directors kind of force their way through all this. And the things that you do may not work with every program. They probably won't work with every program, but hopefully it'll be a catalyst to get that thought going and thinking about the process for your ensemble, for your community, and what works best. Is there anything else that you would like to share to any of the other directors out there?
Well, yeah, I think everybody just understand that this is an evolving thing, and whatever you decide to do this week could evolve into something else next week. I think it's a really good time for creativity and finding new ways to educate kids and also, make our lives more fulfilled. Um, Lean on your students, ask them for ideas. You know that things are floating around in their heads. Well, what we could do this, or we could try that. They might have a really great idea that you could do with your band program or in your sectionals. Um, Try not to do the same thing every week just because this is such an unfamiliar format that if we want our kids to stay engaged, we do need to try and do something a little bit different each week, just so that we know that we're engaging them in new and exciting ways, and so that they see this as not a hindrance, but like, oh, this is cool. Like this is different, and I kind of like it. Find a way to make it meaningful for them, and don't feel like you're stuck inside of this box. I think there's a lot of great ideas floating around out there, and people need to tap into those when they see them come across their news feeds.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for joining us, and I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and good luck.